Okay, I'll start talking now. And if folks still are joining as it's happening, I'll ask Tamsin if you could let them in from the waiting room. That'd be great. But this is our first lecture of the quarter in the Sustainability, Business, and Entrepreneurship lecture series. Um, we have Treacy Kreger here with us, who I'll introduce in a moment. But first, just wanted to point out what we've got going on for the rest of the quarter. So next week we have Johnny Eastland from Liquid Death Seltzer Company be delivering a lecture about provocative marketing for sustainability. The week after that, we have Alex Cummings and Jenna Kemp from Grub, who will be lecturing about veteran-led enterprises. And there's actually an option to attend the live stream in person for that one if you want in the Veterans Lounge here on the Olympia campus. Then the week after that, we have Sarah Quinneman from Southwest Washington Food Hub lecturing on workplace and professionalism norms in food security and agriculture. Then we have Deborah Gartenstein from Business Impact Northwest, and you might know her from Patty Pan Cooperative lecturing on food biz basics. Then we have a visiting scholar, Jeannie Morgan from Roskilde University in Denmark, lecturing on labor exploitation in global supply chains, and that is an in-person workshop as well. So if you'd like to attend in person, that one is happening in Purse Hall 5 on the Olympia campus. Then we have Amy Flynn from Heart Song Wellness lecturing on holistic health and education. And then last, we have Sean Moore, who is the director of the Thurston Center for Business and Innovation, who will be lecturing on responsible business structures. So we've got a full agenda this quarter. Really looking forward to it. Um, if you're wondering who I am, I'm Paige Archer. I'm the assistant director of the Celtic, which is the Center for Entrepreneurial Leadership and Transformational Change. We're a public service center here on the Olympia campus of the Evergreen State College. We host this lecture series, which happens fall, winter, and spring every academic year on Fridays from 1 to 2 p.m. We have a couple certificates in the PACE program. We have some daytime course offerings, and we coordinate internships in business management and entrepreneurship. So the quarter's already started for spring, but if you're interested in an internship for next quarter, you can go ahead and email us at celtic@evergreen.edu. Our co-sponsor is Thurston Green Business,
Other
which
side.
is a business designation you can get here in Thurston County through the Chamber of Commerce. Applications are now closed for this year, and awards were just given actually this past Wednesday. But you can go to their website and you can look at the business directory function. If you're interested in looking up all the businesses here that have that designation, you can. Our fiscal sponsor is the Clean Energy Committee, which is a student-led committee with the mission to support clean energy projects and share sustainability strategies here at Evergreen. Thank you, CEC, for funding us in full. Quick announcement, there's a culturally relevant food drive happening on campus next week, April 14th through 25th. Um, Currently accepting shelf-stable foods that can be kept at room temp. They don't have capacity to cold hold or hot hold food. If you have any questions about that, email basicneeds@evergreen.edu. Okay, Treacy Kreger. So you might know Tracy from Vern's Foods, Our Community Kitchen, South Sound Fresh. Born and raised in Thurston County, Tracy's love for the Pacific Northwest is unwavering. Filling restaurants with his local cuisines has been his legacy over the last 3 decades, but not his only passion. Tracy is an avid hiker, dog lover, and enjoys spending time with his grandkids. So without further ado, I'm going to stop sharing my screen and turn it over to you, Tracy. Thanks for being here.
Good afternoon. It's good to be here. One of the things she talked a little bit about my 30 or 40 years in food service. I've been pretty much an entrepreneur in a variety of businesses and food service throughout those years. I set those goals early on. After 4 years traveling the world in the Navy, I decided I was going to get out and open a restaurant within 5 years. It took me seven. In those years, in the early 80s, I was sourcing locally and trying to help promote a local food system, and I've been doing it ever since. After I closed my second restaurant in 2011, I went to work for a private retreat, and I got the chance to go to a summit that was put together by T.J. Johnson out of the Evergreen Farm program. And that really, really inspired me to work in every way I could to build a stronger, more sustainable local food system. I spent 7 years on the Olympia Farmers Market, Friends of the Farmers Market Board. It was a fundraising arm that helped build capital improvements to the market. And at the same time, I was always had the vision of building a local food hub and a community kitchen. It took me 10 years, and I'm here. What I'm in a facility that is 3,500 square feet. We have about 15, 17 local producers producing a variety of different types of foods. I myself produce value-added products for Taylor Shellfish out of their products. I'm very passionate. One of the things we started in COVID, as far as the food hub, it was South Sound Fresh. We were trying to build a more service for local restaurants to be able to communicate and source from local farms and other food producers. In COVID, in March of 2020, we decided that needed to go to home delivery. We've been doing that ever since. That program is facilitated out of this space. There is where we aggregate and distribute and pack and take it to people's homes. They also can pick up here. We call it an online farmers market direct to your door. My other background is business. I've been doing I took a lot of classes just to get through it. I never took a really program. In the late 90s, I decided to go back to culinary school after cooking for 20 years. When I went back to Vermont, into the New England Culinary Institute, they had a really, really strong program in late 1999 where it was a chef to food service collaborative. And that program is called Vermont Fresh Network. I've modeled a lot of what I do from that program in sense of having a place for people to produce value-added products for both farmers and local food producers, a place for things to be aggregated and stored. I'm a real passionate about, I believe food is medicine. We've got kind of a broken food system. I'm kind of getting a little bit stuck here. I'm going to ask Rebecca to give me a heads up here. What do you think?
I think you're doing great. Why don't you tell them a little bit about how that worked for you when you were in school, and then how you got placed with local chefs and the geography of the
school was going to New England. I almost spent 6 years back there because I got my food and beverage degree also. It was an interesting concept in learning. I knew I'd spent 20 years in food service and I knew how to do things, but I didn't know why. So I learned the science of food. I've learned a lot about taste and flavor and pairing wines and a lot of that variety. But also in that environment, that school was a small program. It was a program based on learning by doing. And it was a 7-to-1 chef ratio. So you had a lot of interaction directly with your instructor in a program that was very, very supportive of just small businesses. I have also spent years really, again, advocating how important food is to our community and how local food is a way to build a stronger community through substantial sustaining jobs and businesses. One of the things that also about out here in the Northwest, what really inspired me growing up here is understanding how this area is pretty much a gastronomical area of food. The Salish Sea that reaches from Vancouver to Olympia out to Straits of Juan de Fuca has been a very, very productive food area, pretty much one of the strongest food production areas in the world, with its diversity from salmon to shellfish to all the wildlife and things that the native tribes lived and just gave them the ability to live a very rich life. I'm very, very love the Pacific Northwest and its ability to grow and produce a variety of foods.
And how does that relate to what happens at South Sound Fresh?
Yeah, I was kind of just asked a question on the side how that relates to South Sound Fresh, because we have such a diversity of food here, and sourcing it locally and having it to be when it makes it like really good, clean, fair food to be available to us. That's another thing. I spent years in a program. It's called Slow Foods International. Its motto is good, clean, fair food for others and all. It's been a really another good, inspiring thing. I spent some years growing all of my produce for a private retreat that I went to work for, which actually I spent my last 11 years before coming to the kitchen, where I sourced everything for the guests locally. I grew on my property that I grew up on in North Thurston County out by the Woodard Bay Conservation District. So that got me into farming. I had a 5,000 square foot garden, and it produced a variety of foods. I also like, with the Slow Foods program, they have what they call the Arc of the Taste. It's a kind of a list of foods that need to keep going that we've had around for years. On my property, my grandmother planted particular apples that are rare to find these days, Gravensteins and Macintosh, also a yellow transparent. I planted on that property, I planted quince trees, which is a beautiful fruit that's been around for 3,000 or 4,000 years. Here at the kitchen, I make a quince paste out of that. All of these different aspects of my life have always focused back to the idea of how important food is. And I grew up in a family where my dad was a food hobbyist. My grandmother, who lived to 103, she spent her years in food service well into her 80s. One of her last adventures was going back to Nova Scotia and helping someone run a cafe, and that was in her late 80s. She really inspired me. Going to her home and smelling when she was cooking during Thanksgiving and Christmas, it was pretty incredible. And she also grew all of her produce for her cafes that she had in Olympia in the 30s and the 40s on the same property that I grew up on. I'm trying to think of some more areas that I could cover. One of the things that has inspired me is in visualizing this is setting goals. And it probably took me 20 years to get here, but I never gave up on the idea of a community kitchen, especially of this size. I'd like to see a bigger one in the community, something that was maybe even supported by the Port of Olympia and the local cities and the county. Something that has a larger distribution center for local products, a larger processing center where it might have individual spaces for meat processing and grain storage, even drying and processing of beans and items of that nature. This area used to be a very strong food production. A lot of what I've seen over the years in Thurston County, a lot of the farms have gone feral or been developed. I lived in North Thurston County where there were strawberry fields everywhere. Well, they're now farms. On Lemon Road where I lived, there was a huge dairy. Well, I call it now a house farm. There's 5-acre pieces. Some of this stuff has been kind of devastating to me to see that much farmland no longer in production. That food summit that I did with Evergreen was an interesting project when I closed my last restaurant. Working with a bunch of folks from Evergreen, it was really, for me, the start. That was in 2011. My co-producer or co-creator of South Sound Fresh, Peter and I Peter Witt, we worked on that business program for 3 years. We presented it to a lot of people. It didn't come to fruition until 2019, and then it went to home delivery again in 2020. That business has been striving since then. We're now in our 4th almost fifth year of delivering some of the best foods to people's doors, and it's healthy. Can't get much local.
Treacy, if you want, you could share your screen and show them South Sound Fresh if you want to talk to them about the website or the vendors on there, if that's something you want to do.
Would we like to share the screen and walk around the kitchen?
Or you could do that too. You could walk around the kitchen. You could unplug.
Hey, I might take some time. I've been suggesting that one of the things we could do is walk around this facility. I could share you this space and what we kind of doing, and give you an idea of what this kitchen's about and what we do with South Sound Fresh here.
So you could just put that up with you,
Mm-hmm.
and then whatever the camera is.
So if we're going to pass it around. You're going to walk around this kitchen. What do you think?
Now you got it.
Yeah. Back here, we got some folks doing production back here. You guys are going to have to, Lily's just having lunch. We're going to go past them. This is our production area of the kitchen, our dish room, our dish area. We're going to go back through some other areas over here. This is where meat's processed at this time. And then I'm going to kind of give you a little more of a tour out here in the main dining room. This used to be an old restaurant that I gutted. This is where we do aggregation and distribution. There's also a space available we do dinners here for Slow Foods and other members. Yeah. Are you that kind of gives you a good idea of what we do here. I'm going to go sit back down.
How often do you meet entrepreneurs that get started in the kitchen here?
I was asked a question by my friend here, Rebecca. The types of different producers that we have in here. We have a company called Earthling Foods. They started a young couple. They produce very healthy fajita seeds toasted in different varieties. They also make some wonderful granola. There are people here there is Lily Katina, who you just met over there. She produces product for their store next door, which is the Jay's Produce Stand. She produces chips, salsas, guacamoles, tamales, and she sells them in the store. She sources products. I make I render leaf fat for her products. I make her chicken stock for some of her products. She cooks most of her stuff. She sources really well. There is a young lady that makes vegan cinnamon rolls. She sources really well. There's another young lady that makes another particular. She tailors to coffee shops. There's a gentleman coming in to make jerky. We've got another producer that does events. We have trucks, food trucks. We also have a smoker, a guy that makes barbecue sauce, and he's got a big smoker out. He does events. So there's quite a bit of variety in here and diversity. This is a very, very good little community.
And if you wanted to, you could show them, you could pop on South Sound Fresh if you wanted to and share your screen. Would you like to do that?
Yeah. I'm going to share you the website for the community kitchen right now.
So you're going to click share screen, and then they're going to start seeing with the screen, and click share. Now they see your computer. So go to South Sound Fresh.
Well, I've got a couple of them. This is our community kitchen website, which kind of shows you a little bit more of what's going on. We also I do a lot of work to help people with the permit system. This talks about the membership. Let's talk about the kitchen a little bit. This gives you another view of the kitchen and all the kind of different things that are available. I'm going to open up the South Sound Fresh website. Let's see if I got that one there. I gotta go over here.
You want a hand?
I'm going to come over here.
There you go.
This is the South Sound West website. This is a product list. This is Meet Your Producers. This particular program is South Sound Fresh is a cooperative of all these different members. These are a lot of these producers are in the kitchen. Holy Baker's in the kitchen. Earthling Foods is in the kitchen. I produce stuff from Chehalis Valley Farms. See who else is in here. We from Friendly Grove, we produce a lot of product from their quince. These are a lot of people you'll see at local farmers markets. Holy Kraut is a wonderful producer of products, all fermented. I use a lot of their products to make some of my value-added products that I sell on this website. This is what, come on down here. This is my profile, the farm that I do. These are the products that I sell. For an example, the chunky oyster is made from Taylor Shellfish smoked oysters. I get the crab comes locally from Taylor Shellfish also. There is this hunter sauce is made from Colvin Ranch meats. I use all my dairy products come from Tuna Worth, which is another producer on here. A lot of my stocks are made from people who raise chickens and pork and beef here on the site. But that's kind of an idea of what South Sound Fresh is about.
So how is South Sound Fresh different from CSA?
Well, South Sound Fresh is you're buying just as you're going through a farmer's market here. So when you go through all the different producers, it's like walking around the farmer's market, and you get to make your own box basically. Every week, this market is open from Friday until Tuesday. On Tuesday, we close the market. All the producers make and bake and harvest their products on Wednesday, bring it here on Thursday, and we deliver it to your door, or it comes and picks up. You can come and pick it up at this location.
And so no one, unlike a CSA, I could do a box 1 week and then skip for several weeks before I do something.
One of the things that's really nice about this program, and there are some people that just order one or two things, you get the opportunity to there's no membership in the sense where you have to order a certain amount. There's no minimum order. My biggest thing when I started this program is giving a market for small producers to be able to sell what they can and of what they have. And then same thing with the members who buy is that they get to choose. They don't have to be forced into any kind of commitment to more than what they want or need for the week, or they don't even have to order every week. When we started this program in COVID, this people were just elated every Thursday when they got their box because they couldn't go out to dinner. So it was almost like having fresh produce, the freshest of produce, delivered directly to your door.
Why don't you go to the product page so they can see the
We're going to go to the different product. Let's go to the product page. So this is what's available currently this week. These items that we're featuring out here is eggs. So you can see this, each one of these products is identified by the producer. So when you're shopping, you can select who you want to get greens from this week, or who, and a lot of people shop around, and then if they order every week, they'll support different producers each week. If they want greens, they might get them 1 week from one producer and then get them from another.
Close that.
There is also CSAs available from farms that we deliver to your door. There is every type of product available. Dairies. This is one particular dairy producer. Egg producers, there's 3 or 4 or 5. Meat producers, there's beef, 2 different beef producers. There are pork producers, Chehalis. There are 2 different chicken producers. And you can see the variety of products that are available. I'm going to go
And Tracy, will you speak to how your model, I feel like in the kitchen, helps smaller farms and smaller producers, right? Because you otherwise, to say, have an account at a store or be at the farmer's market, you have to have like a certain volume all the time, right? Like I feel like you support smaller.
I've been asking here when my assistant Rebecca is that how this kitchen helps small producers. I've got people who have come in here, they're working full time. They work full time and they come in probably just once a week, produce enough product to supply 2 or 3 producers, or they go to markets. We've also been very Jay's Farm Stand next door supports a lot of these small producers by letting them offer their products there. It's really an incubator for small businesses. I try to keep the cost to a minimum, and the more people I have in here sharing, and it helps support each other by just having small producers and allowing them to be able to afford to be here. That's what my vision was back in the early 2000s, was to build an incubating type kitchen.
Why is local food important?
I was asked again about how important local food is. To me, it's the ability to build a stronger community and a healthier community and individuals. Eating locally produced foods because of the richness and the freshness of it, and the fact that it hasn't been transported halfway around the world, and engineered in a way to last that. When we support small businesses, we're supporting smaller entrepreneurs, smaller farms. They spend their money locally. It just, to me, is the way to build a strong community through food.
And what did you mean by when you told me about rebuilding a local food system through food service? How does food service?
One of the things that we as a food hub, when we first started this, really wanted to try to get into more of the food service industry, in such of trying to get into hospitals, trying to get into restaurants, trying to get into other places that would see the benefit of supporting small farms and small food producers, and then marketing that to the community so that they can let them know that they're doing this kind of work. We currently have one of the bigger supporters of South Sound Fresh is the Mason General Hospital. That program's bistro offers a grab and go refrigerator service area that is filled with products. They order a lot of different products from different small producers here off of South Sound Fresh. We also have support from the Kitsap Community Food Co-op. They do the same thing. They get their breads from Blue Herring. They get products from me that are grab and go. There's a couple other. We've got a small store down in Chehalis. It's Farm and Flourish. They periodically order, but they're also based. The owner is a farmer herself, so it's kind of a really good program in that way too. We're trying to build the wholesale. This South Sound Fresh was based on retail because of COVID, and now we're trying to develop it. The challenge for us is that the managers and the people that actually run South Sound Fresh, which is basically about 3 of us with a small board, we all have other jobs. The other 2 members that support this also run Squamish Valley Farms, which is a 735-acre cooperative.
Do you ever turn down people because you don't like where they're sourcing from, like to use the kitchen or to be part of South Sound Fresh?
One of the things is she asked me a little bit about members. Members of the program, I really try to encourage sourcing local. Some things are hard. We have limited amounts of product that are available in smaller quantities that are made local. We use Shepherd's grain, which is produced in eastern Washington. There's a lot of other things. There's things we can't get. I encourage people, if they can't, to support the co-op, because that's where we can get organic and some other things that may or may not be supported in the local area. We do actually have a cooperative buying program where we buy together as members, where they can order through one of the larger food service um, food providers. We use Harbor Wholesale because it is one of the still locally owned food service product providers. We try to avoid the larger ones like Cisco and US Foods. This is a program that I developed inside of here. I manage that program so that they can order as little as um, 1 quart of buttermilk from Smithfield or however it might work out. We're almost to a point of asking questions. So I think I can open it up to questions. I've got some people that we're really talking about. We've been trying to. There are some larger facilities, like there's one in Portland. It's called Red, I believe. But anyway, it's somebody has taken using private money and built a large facility. I am doing some work with some other people where we're trying to get a mapping of all the people that are working on food service and trying to or local food production, and trying to see if we can find private and public money to build even a bigger facility here in Thurston County. I would definitely like to see one be built in Pierce County. There is a lot of work being done up in the north of Seattle in the Whatman County area. There's a food hub called Puget Sound Food Hub. There, that was one of the things that I mirrored in the beginning back in 2000. This work is starting to grow a lot more interest, and we're finding that there's even more money on the private side, and we're trying to access that. Challenge again, I mentioned this that I've got like 3 or 4 jobs, and my time's getting really thin. We always would love some help. A lot of times, what I'll ask people to do is come and tour the kitchen. Um, the pricing structure in these community kitchens is based on an hourly rate. That hourly rate varies between the time of days. In other words, the daytime is usually a little bit higher than the night times. There's also a cost for monthly storage for both refrigeration and freezer and dry. It's difficult to put out a single number because it depends on the producer. With a lot of these small producers that work 1 day a week, I give them a flat rate of something like $250 a month and give them at least 4 days a week, plus I give them some storage. The typical rate is anywhere from $20 to almost $50 an hour in some of these kitchens that are not this one. Storage in refrigeration costs more than storage, dry storage. Freezer costs more. That's why it's a lot of times I like people to come and tour the facility, see if it works for them, and then help them work out a budget and based on what they think their schedule is going to be. Wow, that all sounds right. What I would love to have people doing more of. Get out, get the word out. Um, it's a challenge a lot of times to do that, but it's probably the most important thing is figuring out how the best way and the least expensive way for you to get the word out about what your concept is and what you're thinking about doing. The common challenges is just that's one of the main common challenges. The other one is probably finding financing that's not. I find a lot of people will find financing through grant programs or something, but if you don't make that business work outside of that grant money, making it sustainable. One of the things that we were very successful with South Sound Fresh is we started with very little capital, and we have not even spent that capital, and it made it so that everything we do, as far as we make sure that we're paying people the right amount of money. We as individuals work the business, but we pay ourselves as though we were employees, so that we know that what we're doing is sustainable. When you start a program like this and you rely on money and don't really put all the cost into it, as soon as like grant money disappears, you'll find yourself without enough money to keep it going. What is really kind of a difficult thing without South Sound Fresh is a business that's been built pretty much on word of mouth, and that's always a challenge how to actually make that grow. Um, that's a tough question as far as I go. One of the things as far as what especially in the like in the farmers market and the producing of food, when we have a lot of small producers, um, I think that the competition is good, um, and because it helps people concentrate. I'm kind of getting a brain freeze here. Um, I always encourage competition. Like in this kitchen, if we have three different people that are baking cinnamon rolls. They all have their own type of uniqueness to them. One being vegan, one having it's one of the challenges with that is one of the things is I encourage is try to make when the producers come in here and they're small, I want them to look at their product and see if they can put a uniqueness to that product. Sourcing as much as you can locally can be a really added value to your product, but also just trying to be a little bit different um, in how you're making that product. You know, making it. One of the best things about food is just making it taste good. One of my mottos is love people and make tasty food. There's a lot of people that do that don't kind of understand taste and you know flavor, how important that can be. Now, yeah, knowing when to do your business is probably after you feel really comfortable that you've done enough research, you've actually had an avenue to really kind of practice what you're going to be doing, even in a small way. One of the things is if you're going to do food production, start out by doing even a cottage program out of your own kitchen, starting with just a few products and see if you just get in a couple of pop-ups. That's one of the things as far as the food business. I've always wanted to do a food hub program starting back probably 20 years ago. And I knew when to move into it when everything just seems to be falling in place. As far as what really pushed South Sound Fresh was probably COVID. Regulatory is one of the most challenging things in the food service because the people that are here to regulate are here to protect. So working with Thurston County Health Department, the Washington State Department of Ag, and the U.S. Department of Ag, and the Food and Drug Administration is probably some of the most challenging aspect. I've tried to provide on one of the things on the kitchen website, there are links and then there are examples of licensing. I work with my members to help them make that as least cumbersome and flow because I've done it 4, 5, 6, 7 times now in my lifetime as far as working with the Washington State Department of Ag and the U.S. Department of Ag. Thurston County Health, my first deli was right across from the courthouse, and I got to know a lot of people within the health department, and I've just learned how to make that process work. Vegan Meals Can, we have 4 different working areas. The other thing is if to sanitize that space between production is really important. If we were to do something kosher, a lot of times we'll actually close off an area by screening it. I have places for processing meat separate from processing vegetables. We do try to keep the amount of we keep separate areas for gluten, but we can't say that it's absolutely gluten free, and we can't say it's absolutely any of those areas. A lot of times I have to advise people that when they make a product that they have to indicate on their label that the product is produced in a facility that does handle. I handle a lot of seafood in here. There are different, bakers with different products going on. It's typically just between productions that we do a good sanitization of the facility or the work areas to allow people to produce different dietary restricted items. Being that we're a pretty small family and we pretty much there's only about 15 producers in here. Everybody knows each other. that is pretty much my job as the managing the folks in the kitchen. Um, we really try to keep open communications, and in other words, if we have differences, talk about those differences. I've got signs all over the place that say leave it better than you found it. Really try to emphasize that people be aware that it is a community kitchen, and that when you use something, put it back. It's an ongoing process, but if you just keep it up front and something that we all talk about, communication. Through the process of both these multiple businesses that I do in here, I spent my 7 years on the Olympia Friends of the Farmers Market, is where I spent a lot of time meeting and working with different folks. Peter Witt was on the board with me. We did a business plan together for the South Sound project, which was mirrored after the Vermont Fresh Network program. Peter was quite an asset. We brought different things to the table. Peter did all the research. We came together and wrote a business plan. That business plan was for a project that was 1.2 million. Just being out and networking in different aspects of this business, like I was on the board of the Conservation District for 3 years. I was on the board of Slow Foods. At one time, I ran for Port Commissioner, trying to get public interest in the food system. My message for that run for commissioner was all about rebuilding a local food system. In that process, I met a lot of different people. I try to, when I see or meet, have a relationship that might benefit that program, try to keep that relationship going. And the food hub, I had been working with some folks out at the Suquamish Valley Farms, and when the manager of that farm came to me and we wanted to do the food hub, it was a perfect fit. Paul and Andre Miller run that farm. They were the ones that put in very little capital that got South Sound Fresh together. It just came together. It was great. I put some numbers together like that when I was working with the EDC in trying to encourage them to understand how important the local food economy is, and how we could create more jobs by creating more facilities that focus on local food. In a particular county, for example, there's some numbers you could take it. This is a population of 300, maybe 250 to 300,000 people. The amount of money that is spent on food is a very, very large number. I was trying to encourage those economic development people and that kind of people in that community, that if we could just increase the local food production and farming to incorporate 20% of the amount of money that's spent on food in restaurants and in hospitals and in people in grocery stores, and any area that we could put food into that's made and produced locally, it would make the numbers very large. Let's just say there's in a month or a year, $350 million could go through in food. Well, if 25 million of that was local, or 50 million of it, that would produce a lot of jobs and a lot of businesses that could be. You've got to sell it based on the value of supporting local food. One of the things is right now, even the system that we have right now with South Sound Fresh, the part that we haven't built is the wholesale side. For example, I think one of the programs, and I'm aware of the large corporation that runs the main food service there, but I believe there's a cafe at the Evergreen. Well, that was one of the areas when I was, talking about this in different areas over the last 10 years, is helping them get connected with the local food producers in a way where farmers need to know what they need to plant, and they do that based on what they think they can sell. So a lot of times, like an outfit like the Small Cafe, if it could reach out to someone like South Sound Fresh, and then we introduce you to different producers, and we go to those farmers early in the season of planting, which is late October, November, they're planting, and saying, hey, we need this much product over the years for the cafe. These are some of the kind of things that have to be done in communication and relationships to build a local food system. is having reach out as a cooperative like that cafe at Evergreen, bringing people together and say, okay, we're really going to try to holistically source. Where do you find that? Come to something like South Sound Fresh, a local distributor of products from farms. We almost could build another one that just focuses on that. By far, everybody here's got more than one job. It's real, and there's even farmers. If you have a partner in a farm or food producers, usually one of the partners in that business has a full-time job. For an example, I mentioned earlier, I've got a young lady here. She works a full-time state job, comes here, works 2 days a week, and produces baking goods that she sells to 3 or 4 local coffee shops. And that's how she's trying to transition from a state job to a food producer on a small scale and just slowly building that business. The question of that would be simply go to our community kitchen website. There is a place where you apply and send me contact information. I believe also there's a phone number where you can text me and set up an appointment and come through and tour the kitchen. I just want to know your contact information and get you to do a tour. My availability here is usually Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday afternoons after my production time. Friday is one of the days where I do things like I'm doing right now. It's a good day to come. I'm also 5 minutes away, so I do tours on the weekends when there's people in here producing. That's kind of a difficult question. I would just like to support as many different food producers as I can. We've got quite a bit of diversity in here, and I'm thinking about the different, like right now I've even had people come in and do candied nuts. It'd be really good is just, I'd almost like to have another soup producer in here, and more trucks, more people doing different farmers markets and different direct retail markets that are on a temporary basis without brick and mortar. The Olympics, anywhere. I do have quite a few that there. My son and I, when we first started 7 or 8 years ago, did the Wonderland Trail. We've got a loop up in the Olympics. It takes you up. Actually, that's probably the best hike that we did, and it is 6 rivers, and it's a loop starting in the Quinault, going up to Dosey, back around the Elwha. Yeah, I like the Olympics. About time to wrap up, huh?
Yeah, I think we're at time right now, so I finally got my Zoom working. So I just wanted to take a moment to invite our audience to express their gratitude for joining us today, both of you taking your time out of your busy day, providing us with such amazing information. This was a really rich lecture, and so for folks who are here who've been listening, there's probably a lot that you missed because there was so much information. So once the recording is available on YouTube, back and rewatch it. But Treacy and Rebecca, thank you so much for today. There's just lots of messages of what y'all are doing. It's just very informational and great.
You're welcome.